Hey everyone, it's me, Joe Brennan. I hope you're all doing well. We've got a bit of catching up to do. Something I've done recently is gone to see the Lord of the Rings Extended Edition at the cinema, which not only explains my 9-month absence, it got me thinking about the whole concept of a major motion picture, how the thing is pretty neat. And while I was sat there being enthralled by this epic, I thought to myself, wouldn't it be nice if Star Wars did a movie again? I don't know how closely you guys follow the news of Star Wars projects in development hell, but for some reason it's something I care about. The recent update is that, perhaps unsurprisingly, Patty Jenkins' Rogue Squadron has been taken off Disney's slate of upcoming films. Whether or not it's ever going to happen is still up in the air, like the plane she wants to make the film about, but there was just no way it was going to be released a year from now because these things take a while and they hadn't even starting this one yet. It was meant to already be in production, but for some reason it's been put off. Maybe it's because Patty Jenkins' last film, Wonder Woman 1984, wasn't particularly popular. Maybe it's because her quest to create
the greatest fighter pilot movie of all time
has already been completed by a movie whose name rhymes with Schmopgun Schmaverick. Maybe it's a bigger issue with Lucasfilm as a whole that we'll get to later. But whatever the reason, there's now very little clarity on what to expect from Star Wars on the big screen in the coming years. What's left of Star Wars on the movie slate is a vague, untitled blob in 2025 without a name, director, or concept attached. Is it Taika Waititi's? Is it Rian Johnson's? Is it Kevin Feige's? Are any of these ones actually happening? They all have other projects to do first, and no one seems in any hurry. We have no titles, no real dates, no story details, no trailers, no idea what's going on. And I don't think that's Lucasfilm keeping us in the dark. The 2025 film is not a well-kept secret, it's just a placeholder. Kathleen Kennedy is just as unsure as we are. They have so much planned for Disney Plus that we've heard all about, but they are taking their time to figure out how, if at all, Star Wars will return to the big screen. They're either thinking really hard about it, or it's just not a priority for them. And it's starting to feel like the latter. To me, it seems like getting new Star Wars movies into the cinema should be among the top of the list of priorities, and I'd like to dive into why. I like saying that. Now, it's likely that some of you are thinking along the same lines as Lucasfilm. Why bother with movies when Star Wars television has been killing it recently? And that's a good question that I'd like to respond to with another question. Has Star Wars TV really been killing it recently? That's killing it in the positive sense rather than the destroying the franchise sense. Although, maybe that too. People liked The Mandalorian. They really liked The Mandalorian, but now we're getting a million Mandos forever. We even get episodes of Mando in other shows. I know I'm just not smart enough to understand its biblical complexity, but they're building a miniature interconnected cinematic universe with crossovers and spin-offs that are also sequels to animated series, so they're a bit alienating for non-fans, but also they've recast everyone so it's jarring for the fans. It's this whole thing. It's like they got a taste of something seemingly new with Mando and decided to double down on making it the one and only future for the series, eroding what made it feel fresh and new, and shoving aside the medium that Mando used as a foundation. Because so much of The Mandalorian is about reusing, repurposing, and recontextualizing iconic imagery from the movies. They provide the building blocks that the shows use as jumping off points, and the more the shows dip back into the movies for inspiration, the more likely it is that they're going to start running out. I don't know how much of the series will survive as its own lasting iconography. I can't imagine a new series in 40 years using the Mandoverse as its primary inspiration. This feeds into the bigger issue of the cultural longevity of these series. I have a lot of love for a lot of what the Obi-Wan Kenobi series did, but comparing it with the recent films, it came and went with staggeringly little fanfare. Some people loved it, some people hated it, but very few people are still talking about it. The world moved on immediately. This is even more true about the Book of Boba Fett. That came out this year. I care about Star Wars an embarrassing amount, and even I forget that happened. The format just doesn't allow for the kind of cultural staying power that was achieved by the sequel trilogy in Rogue One. Even when the discussion was negative or soul-crushingly stupid, it persisted, because we felt like those films mattered. There was something to say about them, something to talk about, and there still is. This is a brand new magazine where Rian Johnson reflects on his time making The Last Jedi and how he feels about it 5 years on. Can you imagine Robert Rodriguez doing this for the Book of Boba Fett in 2027? Because I can't. The whole vibe of a movie's release is a completely different beast. Obviously, the more commercial capitalist side of things has its problems, but the drops of merch and tie-in material and teasers and press tours are so much more of an event when it's a movie, a big Star Wars. I've spoken about Star Wars trailers on this channel before, but each line, each moment gets so ingrained into our minds. The same goes for the whole movie once it's out. The excitement of watching it and the moments that shock and move us stay with the audience so much better when we've seen it in a theatre full of people. The shared experience is a key part part of it. The cheers at the opening crawl, the collective gasp at the Holdo maneuver, the electric buzz of the fleet arriving at Scarif, everyone in the cinema leaning forwards in their seats as Ben Solo comes to save the day. It's about excitedly chatting with your friends and family as you come out of the screening, recording a video of yourself saying you stood up and cheered and cried and laughed and punched the air and all that. That's proper Star Wars. I know it sounds like gatekeeping, but it's just that, my favourite thing about a Star Wars movie is that it feels like a movie. It feels like a real, go to the theatre film movie that the kind of reason why you go to watch something on the big screen. As much as I've found great enjoyment in a lot of Star Wars television, it has always personally felt like an additional supplementary Star Wars. That doesn't mean I want it to stop, I just wish there was something for it to supplement. To me, Star Wars is movies, and historically, movies is Star Wars. The series defined the whole concept of a blockbuster film, and is now cowering in fear of its own legacy, scared to go up against the cinematic equivalent of its children. Why has this happened? Was the reaction to the critically acclaimed financial hit sequel trilogy a bit too scary for them? They've done 5 movies, and 4 of them made over $1 billion, and all of them have a lot of fans, dedicated, passionate fans. There are people that don't like them. What a surprise, that's never happened to Star Wars before. Better pack up and go home. Sounds ridiculous, but they essentially have. They've traded the concrete success of box office performance for a bunch of stats and demographic estimates of how much Book of Boba Fett is making people subscribe to the thing that they're already subscribed to. But it's all worth it because at least those fans are happy now because Luke is chopping up all those robots. I'm being facetious about the box office. I know what had them running scared was Solo a Star Wars story. You could make a whole video on Disney and Lucasfilm's inability to learn the right lessons from that failure. Let's release a spin-off movie 5 minutes after the last big one came out and not bother marketing it was never a good idea. But instead of seeing that fact, they've gone, oh, the audiences must just hate recasts and spin-off movies. Better cancel that Kenobi movie that literally everyone is demanding because clearly no one wants it. So okay, they're doing TV instead of movies. All the resources and creative people that would have been allocated to the movies are going to the shows. If that's the case, where is the money? Why does it feel like these things are being made with no budget? Why does Kenobi look like mud? Why weren't they allowed to use John Williams' music themes? Why did Mos Espa in Book of Boba Fett look like a small car park? The shows have felt so small lately, not helped by the fact so many people are watching them on iPads and laptops in well-lit rooms. The magic has been dented by the scale. I don't need everything to be huge and epic with massive battles and millions of characters. I just want it to look and feel like these people exist in a real space, and for something like a laser sword duel to look interesting. Compare these two scenes of characters coming to a climactic confrontation in the dark, lit only by their lightsabers. It's absurd just how much Kenobi pales in comparison. As I was making this video, the first 3 episodes of Andor came out specifically to make me look silly. So yes, it is a shining example of what small screen Star Wars can look like and be. But if anything, it just made me want the return to the cinema even more. It looks incredible, but I miss being able to see this kind of visual on a big screen. I think a story like Andor is at home in the televisual format, but a lot of these other shows just feel mishandled and in the wrong place. Even if you've loved every show they've done, there's no good reason why we can't have both. Surely the famous and ongoing film series Star Wars should have at least some films in the pipeline. The most recent movie release in 2019 doesn't seem too long ago, but it looks like the earliest possible release date for the next one is 2025, and the likelihood of it being much later grows every day that there's no news. You're then looking at a pretty large gap, one that starts to rival the ones between previous trilogies, but with no regime changes or temporary retirements to justify it. Every time Kathleen Kennedy is asked about it or talks about it, she's like, yeah, we're kind of figuring it out on that front, but she doesn't seem bothered at all by the fact that they've made no progress in that area for years. I think they're scared they'll have another controversial film on their hands, but if they were doing enough movies with significant variation in the type of story they were telling, fans would care less if there was one that they didn't like. Playing it safe by running the franchise into the ground with endless Mando seasons and spin-offs feels way more damaging to the brand than an ambitious movie that divides audiences. They are probably also scared of another Solo situation with a disappointing box office performance and an overblown budget, which probably wouldn't have happened if they delayed it when they pushed The Last Jedi back, or given it any proper marketing, or not spent twice as much money as they needed to by redoing the whole thing when Phil Lord and Chris Miller were making it too interesting. It was a perfectly preventable failure that they're so terrified of happening again that they've just decided to do absolutely nothing, so nothing goes wrong. They keep announcing people instead of movies, creatives who will one day do a Star Wars, and no details beyond that, but they announce them super early, pretty much when they're still in the talking stage. And then things change, reputations, availability, creative direction of the whole studio, so we just get endless cancellations and non-cancellations, projects with a half-life. There have been rumblings this week about Tony Gilroy being signed on for multiple new shows and a movie. It's nice to see movies discussed with all this. Could this be the start of something new, or is the Rian Johnson cycle beginning again? Only time will tell. It gives me a little bit of hope, but given Lucasfilm's history, you can understand me not being totally convinced that these things will ever see the light of day. I can be forgiven for not immediately scrapping the video and leaping with joy. They've still got a way to go. In fact, with all due respect, they need to get their shit together and just do something. Obviously, I want Rian Johnson and Tony Gilroy, but I'll take Taika, I'll take Feige, High Republic, Old Republic, New Eras, something with a sequel trilogy gang, a Top Gun knockoff, I don't care. Just announce a film project and see it through. Stop hiring people you're gonna fire and stop firing people you've already hired. I want to sit down in a theatre and see a brand new Star Wars with cinematography that's intended for cinema and not just imitating it. New moments and new characters that will define a generation of fandom, with a popcorn and an auditorium full of fans buzzing with anticipation. I know I'm not the only one who feels this way, but clearly none of us have any say at Lucasfilm, which is baffling to me given the history of the series. The uncertainty is a big part of the problem. It's not fun to just have a vague mess of semi-announced projects to either get fruitlessly excited about or disregard completely. Even if they decide it's time to have a cinematic hiatus, if there's not going to be a Star Wars movie for the next few years, we should know that. We should know when to expect the next one, and preferably what it's going to be. I hope this doesn't seem like the entitled ramblings of a fanboy with too much time on his hands thanks to debilitating chronic fatigue. Maybe it is that. I don't think so though. I just like Star Wars and want it to be good and popular, and to do that it might need to enter the cultural psyche for longer than once a week for 6 weeks twice a year. I've had an incredible time this year watching things like Lord of the Rings, Top Gun Maverick, Nope, The Batman, E.T. and Inside Out on the big screen. I think it would be such a shame if Star Wars abandoned the opportunity for that kind of experience. I'd love to know what you all think about this, whether you care, whether you don't think it matters at all. Genuinely, I just love reading comments. So let me know in the comments below. Did I used to do that? Is that one of my things? I feel like I used to do that in every video. What's the other thing I say? Oh, love you lots. I'll probably say that at the end as well, but I've missed saying it. I love you lots. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you in another 9 months. No, I appreciate if any of you have stuck around. I have a fun little health condition called ME, and it can make life very challenging. It's quite hard to pour the necessary hours into content creation when the bare minimum of existence takes up all my time and energy. But making videos is something I love doing, so I will strive to keep doing it when I can. I'm so glad to have got this little video out. I hope you enjoyed it. I won't make any promises about when the next one will be, but I hope that some of you are still here to see it. Also, it's not just my fatigue that's chronic. I'm also chronically online on Twitter, so if you have any interest in hearing more from me, that's where you go. There's a link in the description. That's all for today. Goodbye. Love you lots.